Welcome everybody to Global Startups, Teams, Risks, and Expansion, our next edition of our expert session, brought to you by SimpliRoute, SafetyWing, and Vistra, which we have some wonderful speakers from. And, just a reminder that, this session is really about helping startups and any company really who is interested or currently expanding while growing into new territories, new countries, new places. This is going to be great for those with remote teams to understand, things like risk and opportunities and how to really, approach global expansion regardless of size in the best way possible. And I'm really excited because we have some amazing experts who I'll start with Eyal. So Eyal Shats is a co-founder and chief strategy officer at SimpliRoute. He is one of SimpliRoute is one of our portfolio companies, and Eyal is also an Endeavor entrepreneur. Eyal, interestingly, which could be something people might want to consider when asking follow-up questions, Eyal is also an investor himself. He's a GP at Ad Ventures Capital, which is a seed fund in Chile that is investing in startups with potential to disrupt legacy industries in LATAM, which there's lots of opportunities, and they focus on B2B. So anyone who's interested to hear, investor perspective, Eyal will probably have really interesting insights. Next, we have Lona, Alia, head of revenue at SafetyWing. They're building the first global safety net for remote companies, for example, with Nomad Insurance for remote workers and nomads worldwide. She is also a former founder herself and a Y Combinator alumni. She was the founder of StyleLend, which is the world's first peer-to-peer luxury fashion rental platform, where she raised more than $2 million from VCs from all over the world, including Silicon Valley, New York, Europe, the Mideast, and Asia. And she was a mentor at 500 startups for the past 3 years. So Lana obviously has, incredible insight, and excited to hear what she has to say. And last but not least, we have Gonzalo Garcia, Senior Director of Global Compliance at Vistra. And Vistra provides a full suite of corporate services to a lot of different industries and companies of all sorts of sizes. Gonzalo is a seasoned sales leader with over 15 years of experience, helping global corporations essentially become more operationally optimized. He focuses on global compliance services ranging from legal support to financial and HR needs for companies that are expanding, which is why we have him here, and currently operating in countries across the world. So just some quick intros there. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that we can get back on camera. And let's jump in. So I assume the panelists are ready to go. So the first thing I just want to talk about is a little bit more, I would guess, high level general. And I want to throw this to kind of all of you, and we can start maybe with, I guess, Eyal, just going in the order of the intros I did. From your perspective, what is a good systematic way to grow a remote company? What would you think is like priority when thinking about growing a remote company? Any insight into a systematic way to do it would be great to hear.
Yeah, I think it's all hi, and thanks for the invitation. I think it's all about process, right? So if you have well-defined process in your country, and you understand how to onboard people, understand exactly what is your culture and what does it mean, right? And I just was talking yesterday with a startup, and we talk about culture, and we were talking, okay, what is your culture? And they explain me what is the culture. Okay, what do you do to make it real, right? What are the actions so you can feel the culture in the company? And the response was not perfect, right? Because you need to define a culture, and then you need to apply it to the team. So once you have the culture defined, and while you have the process, you understand exactly what are the profiles that you want to join your company, what are the talents and what you are looking for, it's much easier to go outside and be able to grow it. And I think the second one is the communication channels, right? And understanding different cultures. So we all in pandemics went remote, and some of us was doing it before, right? So So you can say, okay, we are in control, we understand what we are doing, we have all the process in place, we have all the communication channel in place, and then you can go remotely in different countries and make it grow, because you have different challenge when you go outside as well. Again, you have the different culture, you have different type of people. You need to understand how each of them works, and they can work differently. So I think, like, to summarize what I just said, it's getting the process in place and refine them in terms of also the culture that you have in the company.
Awesome. Very cool. So if I could summarize, it's basically making sure you know what your culture is and making sure that it's consistent across wherever you go. And a way to make sure that happens is good communication and set up good communication channels. Awesome. Thank you, Eyal. Lana, curious what you have to say.
Yeah, sure. Happy to chime in here. Just to give you guys some context, in our company, we're about 160 people across 70 countries. And we continue to have 95% retention, which is something really incredible. And I want to echo what Eyal was saying about culture, because it is it that keeps us at 95% retention. And, retention is something really that you should strive for, because it's very expensive to replace your team. And the way that we have done that is we first established a very clear vision and mission. And based on that, we can hire people that are aligned with that vision and mission. And when you hire people that are aligned with that mission, you don't have to really manage them. And that's the really cool part of being remote, because we don't have to do a lot of management, not a lot of micromanagement. We trust that those that we hired believe in what the company will achieve, so therefore they will manage themselves. And what we do at the outset is that we establish very clear goals too. So once we hire the right people on board, we have clear goals. So there's a North Star. Let's say we have to hit 50 million ARR by the end of the year, and then we split them up into quarterly goals, and then everybody puts together 3 goals per quarter that they are going to tie to the North Star. So if you make sure that you hire the right people, then you give them very clear goals, you build a very strong remote culture and team that is able to perform. So those are the things I want to say right now. I can say a lot more, but I'll let the others also chime in.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think to add on to what it kind of an enhancement, or in addition to what Eyal said, trust and goals, right? It sounds like in addition to culture, communication is kind of like a foundational part to keep things really well moving well when expanding globally, which is obviously very challenging. Gonzalo, very curious about your perspective as more of, on the consultant side and services side. What do you see in terms of a great way or systematic way to build a remote company?
I think Eyal and Lona brought up 2 very important points: the culture and the vision side of it. But I think what I see through years and years of doing this is, and through the pandemic and what happened after and how everybody had to go home, and it's having a sense of belonging, right? Like what we see when our customers are hiring people in other countries where they may not have offices, or even in the US, but everybody's working from home, is to be able to give them a sense that they belong to a company. And there is several aspects to that, but one that is very important is to be able to make them feel like they belong. You need to have the right setup in how you hire these people, right? What I see a lot of companies doing at the beginning is they find talent, country X, and they say, oh, you would be a great addition. Why don't you come over and start working with us? But you're gonna be an independent contractor. Like, we're not gonna put you on a payroll. We're not gonna put you on an employer of record type of setup where you're still part of the company. And that kind of creates a barrier between the newly hired employee, because he's an independent contractor, and the company. So where we see the best results in employee retention and talent retention is when companies take the time to actually set up the right environment and the right employment for this talent. And when that happens, The employee gets an email from the company. The employee sees that they're part of the culture, that they can participate on activities of the company. It drives a lot more engagement and a much stronger sense of belonging to the company.
Very awesome. So if I were to summarize that, is to prioritize engagement through proper setup, which is not necessarily things that, especially maybe startups, always think about is, the setup. But I just want to ask a quick follow-up to Gonzalo. Outside of potential lower engagement, what kind of risks do companies face in terms of compliance or otherwise if they're not set up properly?
Well, a number of risks. The reality is, from a company perspective, the sense of belonging is obviously an important point, but companies tend to sometimes they try to cut corner or cost by setting up like an independent contractor engagement. The reality is that most countries across the world, they have regulations that will impact you as a business negatively if that's the route you're going and it's not the proper setup. Like you cannot have an employee in Chile or in Colombia or Spain or Japan that is 100% dedicated to your business. They're adding value to the business and generating revenue, but you're not compensating them correctly, or they don't have the same rights that other employees have either in country or other countries. It creates a risk of permanent establishment in country where you have more than 5-10 employees and you don't have a subsidiary or you don't have a branch or some type of setup. And that can translate into a number of fines and retroactive payments that you're going to do to the employees. So it's a huge factor. So yeah, the sense of belonging for the employee is good and it's what we're aiming for, or these companies are aiming for. But looking at the risk aspect of it, it should be another big consideration, because you see it day in and day out, and not all these situations make the news, but you see how companies get in trouble over and over again because they're not doing the right setup for their employees.
Fantastic. Awesome. Very, very insightful. Before I jump to the next topic or next question, I just want to remind attendees that you're welcome to jump in with questions instead of waiting to the end. We prefer this to be more of a dynamic conversation. So don't hesitate to jump in, raise your hand, or notify us in any way that you want to ask a question. We'll unmute you and we'll allow you to jump in.
Rafael?
Yes, please go ahead, Lona.
Sorry, just to add to Gonzalo, I think once you set your company properly through Vistra or any other, I guess, company that you choose, you also want to look at benefits and what you offer in terms of benefits. So that's a big piece of retention as well. And we see this over and over again with different companies, that in order to attract and retain the best talent, you also have to give them really good benefits. We can go into that later, but some of those benefits obviously are, health insurance, maybe an office stipend, a learning budget, maybe a planned budget, things like that, that you can really make people excited and feel part of the team and feel taken care of, that someone really cares for them so that they can produce at the top level for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also to make sure the benefits are usable, right? Not
Exactly.
kind of gesture benefits, right?
Exactly.
I find particularly interesting the concept of nomad insurance, fascinating, which is why I think SafetyWing is doing well. But that's an example of very specific for remote employees, something that they can really use and really value, right? And again, you have 95% of retention, so no surprise that works. So I want to change gears a little bit and talk about something particularly, I think, of interest to a lot of people in our audience, founders, which is fundraising. Maybe this is more geared towards Lona and Eyal, but Gonzalo, obviously feel free to jump in. But, a question that I think has been out there in the ether around this concept of remote is, can actually a remote company or a remote startup reach unicorn or billion-dollar valuation, right? I think this is a question that a lot of VCs and investors have, and some of them may doubt that it's possible. So I want to ask everybody here, and I'm not going to pick somebody specifically, just jump in. Do you think it's possible for a remote company to reach a very high valuation? And does it impact fundraising? Does it make investors skeptical or make them hesitant to invest if you are fully remote?
Yeah, I'll go for it if you want to go first.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So we are a startup, right? And we are in the Venture City portfolio, and we all aiming to be a unicorn as soon as possible, right? And we are fully remote today. I think what the venture capital is looking is what we talked before, right? If you're remote, but you understand what you're doing, you understand your culture, as we talked before, and the trust and the goals and the vision and all what we mentioned before, and how you want to build the company for the next step as well, because you have different steps, right? So as a startups, you can build a remote team, and it should be like easy if you're in 1-2 country, 20, 30 people, you're in early stage. But then usually after Series A, you will have a big jump mainly in amount of people, and also if you're in Latam, for example, as we are in number of countries. So it becomes much more complex, right? So you have now 5, 6, 7 different like office or different countries, and you jump maybe from 20, 30 people, now you're more close to 100 people. So, and I think that's the evaluation that needs to be done. If you was able already, when before being remote and before the pandemic, maybe it's already really, really challenging to jump from 30 people to 100 or more. And doing it remotely, I think it's more challenge. But if you have all what we just mentioned before, and you understand the challenge exactly, I think you can aim the challenge, and you can do it. And if you do everything as we mentioned, I think you have. I say it in the other way. I think it's a big value, being remote and be able to achieve a higher valuation. You can get more talent, right? So you have talent anywhere. So if you know how to get talent remotely, and you have all the onboarding process, you can get better talent. You can do it faster. In our case, for example, we have office, like we open office in different places, but we are remote, so you can get talent from anywhere. So we have tried everything. We have tried like work from anywhere when we just started doing it remotely, and then we have challenged, for example, for time zone. So we get people from Australia, and we are in like Eastern zone. So it's really hard to get like with 12 or more and time difference. So you need, like, as a startup, you need to adjust it, but you need to be really agile on adjusting. It's not only saying, okay, I'm fully remote and that's all. And let's understand. So you need to understand what does it mean for each one of us. But like in summary, for sure. And I think it's a value. The other way, I think you can be remote, but I think you need to know the people, right? What we are doing for the adjustment that we're doing today for the C-level, and we have been hiring C-level without knowing them, like in person. And I think it's a mistake. So what we are doing today, and it's easy for us because we are in Latam. So, okay, I just took a plane yesterday or the day before to Mexico. I spent 1.5 days, and I do the interview. I did the final interviews in person, and I think it's important. And the other also, I think it's a little bit hard to get knowing the people. Like you can have really, really good like compliance, and I think really have like efficiency. That's the word I was looking, like efficiency in the working day by day. But I don't believe you get to know the people. So I think like gathering together everyone like once a year at least, right? Or traveling or getting to know them a little bit more in person, right? Do they have kids, right? Why they have enough to do? So yeah. I think it's important. So yeah, it was a complex like answer, but the answer is yes, of course.
Yeah.
But there, of course, we as a startup need to fine tune it and do it really agile to be able to understand where is the exact point that we want to be in.
Yeah, it's complex, obviously. And yeah. Lona, I see you want to chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in. And actually, Eyal, great points there. The one that I want to challenge you with is that you have to meet the people in person. I am very bullish on remote. I have been since many, many years back. But really, remote has been life-changing for me, and I would not trade it for anything else in the world, really. I would want to go into an office. Now, a couple of things that you said is that, yeah, you cannot hire people if you don't see them in person. I was hired sight unseen, and I performed really well for the company that first year, and I met everyone probably after 10 or 11 months. And also, I hired my entire team of the sales from 0 to 14 people, completely sight unseen. I probably saw them at least a year more after that I met them in person. And I can tell you that they're the same people that I thought on camera. So I was very pleased to see that something like that can work. Obviously, what I mentioned earlier is that if you have a clear mission and vision, and these people are like, oh my God, this is so cool, I want to join because of this, you usually pick the right people. But of course, you're going to make mistakes. And of course, sometimes it is good to meet them in person, depending on the area that you hire from. But to answer your question, can a remote company become a billion-dollar company? Absolutely, yes. We have examples of that today. So we have GitLab, which went public. It's $7.6 billion market cap. We have Automatic, which has been a company that Matt Mullenweg started many years ago. I want to say like, I don't know, 2000s or maybe like even 99, but like that's also a $7.7 billion company. So we have many examples of that it's definitely possible, and more companies are being started remote. So we'll see many more of those examples. And once investors see those examples, that's when they're going to warm up to the idea and be like, oh, this remote thing is actually working. So I think without seeing a bunch of companies going public, it's hard for them to invest. So I can understand that some of them want to see people in person. You know, I raised in Silicon Valley and they wanted me to stay in Silicon Valley, but my customers were in New York. So I had to move to New York. And they had to get used to that idea. But now that you can hire talent globally, you don't have to necessarily be in one location. So I think that's it's something that they're going to get used to.
Sorry, Lona. To add to that really, Rafael, I know you have a number of other questions, but I also see examples, like Lona said, of companies that are actually doing really good and getting to the billion-dollar valuation, being remote. In many cases, it's actually seen as a benefit for the employee to be able to work remote, and then for the company to have the flexibility to not to have to hire in the US or Europe. Like, we help a number of companies that are coming to us saying, hey, I got this funding, I have this money, and I have to set up a call center. Where should I go? So having that flexibility of having people working from other locations, but also from their own home, it's a benefit. What I would warn the investors and the startups in this call is that the mistake I see again and again and again is that they wait until they actually get the funding approved to start worrying about things like, where do we want to go? How do we want to set up? What are the things that we need to do? So by the time they, for example, get to us, they tell us, we just got funded, we have this amount of money, like, we need to be in 10 countries or 20 countries in the next 5-6 months, and we tell them it's impossible. Like, that's not how it works. So I would love to see startups having or doing a little bit more of the homework on their side before they get the funding, so they're ready and they understand costing, timeline, risk, etc. by the time they're ready to expand or to invest that money. That would be, if it's a lesson learned from this webinar, I think it would be a great one for the people that are participating.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I agree 100% with Lona. Just to maybe to refine my answer. I also, and I think I don't have met all my team members yet. And they're in Mexico and in Chile and Argentina, so they're not far away. But yes, absolutely, you can hire, and you should hire like the teams, and especially like sales team, and you need to grow it fast, and you don't need to know each one of them. I do think like at least in my case, like in startup, or maybe in my specific case, and I think it's like when the VC wants to meet the founder. And we can ask Laura later, right? And she will meet you, right? And and she will invite you to the office and maybe to have dinner, and maybe because you need to, when you're mainly in startup, if you hire like a C-level or maybe country manager for us, I would like to know him, and that was based in experience, right? So we hire so many like country managers without knowing them, and we have different results. But like in VP C-level, when you're a startup and you're in our size, it's not so many, right? So you have like maybe 4 or 5 C-levels.
And how many employees do you have, Eyal? Just so everybody knows.
How many what? Sorry.
How many people work at SimpliRoute?
Today, like 120.
Okay, yeah. And I guess kind of the takeaway for me in this conversation between you and Lona is that it's not black and white, right? There is at some point some preferences, right? Like you talk about Laura from the Venture City, she loves human connection. So she wants to meet founders in person before she invests. It's like a must for her. But you know, some people are a little more lenient on that, and you know, I guess it just depends, right?
And it depends on size of company, type of company,
also,
right?
Of course.
And how close are you going to work with them, right? So we're in a startup, like, so I'm like maybe 8 hours on Zoom or Meet with my C-level, and also it demands a lot of work like and extra hours or travel. So for us, that was our conclusion. But I agree, it depends on each case. For us, it's okay. I need to understand if it's all in, right? It's a little bit a lot like choosing a founder.
Right.
Is he all in? What is thinking? What about his family? What is living? What is the motivation?
Right.
So I think we all agree, right? It depends on the case, depends on the size, and I think it depends also on the level of what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Great insights. I do want to turn to our audience because they have some questions. There's one directly related to this, which I want to get to first, and then Alvaro typed in something. The most recent one that I'll get to now is from somebody anonymous. I guess they're a little shy, no problem. So I'll ask it. Afterwards, I want to get to Alvaro's question. And Alvaro, I know you're on here. We're going to go ahead and unmute you so that you can ask it out loud. It's coming back to a question about benefits. But first, somebody's asking Eyal and Lona, coming from the startup side, do you know which VCs specifically invest in remote teams or have a proclivity to remote teams? Because it seems like current VCs want early stage teams to be together. So do you know particularly any VCs that you know are more welcoming to remote teams?
Go ahead, Lona.
You know, that's a really good question. And that's something that I cannot say decisively that here's a handful of VCs that prefer remote. You know, VCs have herd mentality. So they follow kind of like whatever is trendy or each other. And of course, I don't want to offend anyone here, but you know, they'll see what everybody else is doing. So for example, right now, I was just in Silicon Valley last week and was at the Y Combinator reunion. And it is true that even YC is saying that early stage teams should be together. I personally don't agree with that, but because they had a certain experience with having 300 companies go through a batch during the pandemic, each time that they had a YC program. So there's a winter program, there's a summer program. They probably saw that those batches were not so close together. Maybe those teams maybe didn't do so well. So I think they have very little data to base this on, and they are saying what they know, which, you know, YC has always been in person except the pandemic, and they're very much for that. I personally disagree because our company was formed remote and it works really well, and it scales, you know, really well. So to tell you the truth, I don't know exactly. I know Kinnevik, which is one of our investors, they potentially could be interested in remote, but I cannot tell you like a list of those VCs that will say, yes, I love remote, let's do this.
Yeah. Fair enough. Eyal, any insights?
No, I don't have a list as well, but I understand why. And then I think if it's really early stage, what does it mean remote, right? So if you are 2 or 3 founders and you're in different place, I think it's hard like to get in the beginning. It's all about like thinking and designing and doing experiment. So if you're fully remote, I think the level of like innovation could be affected. But if you're already, so I think it depends on the stage. So if you're really, really early stage, pre-revenue, so I'm not sure what does it mean remote, right? So if you're in different place founders, I like, as you mentioned, in like it's a small, really early stage venture fund as well. I will ask more questions. I won't say no, but I would like to understand a little bit more. So how you design it, how you talk, because at the beginning, it's like, okay, it's like 24/7.
Yeah.
Let's talk, things, experiment and do stuff, right? So how you do it? If you have like good answer, it's okay for me.
Okay.
But you have to go to answer.
Fair enough.
But also
fair enough.
early stage is about talking to customers, right? Like you need to understand like what problem you're solving. And if you're talking to customers and you have a good idea what they want, and then you have a good team to build it within you, then I don't see why you shouldn't be independent. I don't see why you have to be in a room. There are tools out there, and actually they're being produced at a higher rate now, innovation in this space. So you're able to do it in a way that is not disruptive. Like, you know, GitLab did this many years ago, 10 years ago. They started completely remote. Today, we should be able to do this much easier with tools like Teamflow, with Slack, with all of the different communication platforms. We should be able to do it. But yeah, like Eyal said, like maybe they'll ask more questions. They want to be more comfortable. They know what they invest in, and they're more comfortable with having an office or people together or closer to them, so that if they need to go in and whiteboard something together, they can do that. But you just have to make them feel comfortable, because you say, hey, I know what I'm doing. This is the problem I'm solving. This is the product I've built. And this is how we win because we are remote.
Perfect. Awesome. Very insightful. Thank you both. I want to go back to Alvaro. Alvaro, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to talk. So feel free to jump in with unmuting your mic and asking your question out loud. And if for any reason that doesn't work, I'll repeat the question, but it's coming back to benefits. So, okay, Alvaro, you should be allowed to talk.
Yep. Hello.
Yep.
Alvaro here. Thanks a lot for the awesome insights. Yeah, my question was around benefits, and it's around which trends are you seeing now in benefits, as in new things that are gaining traction, which ones are actually being more important for employees and talent, like to close the talent and also to retain people, and which ones are losing importance. So as a founder or people, HR manager, like, okay, what should my benefits package look like, and what should I think of bringing in, and what should I maybe think of dropping and not putting focus on?
Awesome. And Gonzalo, Vistra does this, right? So as an expert in suggesting HR and services and products, I would love to hear from you, and then Lona and Eyal, of course, as well.
I was gonna say, I'm curious to see what Eyal and Lona think about this, but let me give you the answer from doing this many times over. Alvaro, the main thing is there are benefits that are mandatory in each country, and that's part of every standard package. And through Latin America, Spain, like you see that you have to pay a number of what is called overhead, a number of mandatory benefits, right? Like the health insurance, if it's public in the country, whatever. That's part of the package. And for those countries, I would say it's good to ask similar companies within your industry, right? And that's what we do as well. Like our HR advisory team, like they will tell you companies in your industry offer X, Y, and Z. Your question about what is changing or what is more important or whatever, actually being able to work remote has become a big point. And even though it's not a benefit on itself, many employees or many candidates are coming today to this company saying, hey, I want to work, I'm interested in the position, but what is a percentage of remote work that I can do from home, etc. Right? So that is a big one. Then the other standard is in country, you will see that per industry, there are standards, right? Some companies offer, like Lona was saying, like meal plans, right? Or transportation benefits. What has, besides the remote work, what has also or what I have seen as a huge factor nowadays through Europe and through Latin America, is also the availability to have like a work-life balance, right? Companies that are in favor of allowing their employees to decide not when to work, but to give them trust in them enough to say, okay, yeah, you have this many days of vacation a year, but you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna move into a model where there is unlimited vacations, right? And unlimited vacations doesn't mean you're not gonna work. Is we're trusting you with needing the days that you need and giving enough notice to your manager, etc. But like making sure that you still get your work done, right? The other thing to consider, Alvaro, is that these HR regulations change constantly in countries, and it's important to know what is becoming mandatory and what is not becoming mandatory when looking at benefits. But yeah, I'm curious to see what Lona and Eyal have to say.
Yes, happy to chime in here. Alvaro, benefits are obviously very, very important. And one thing that I want to add to whatever Gonzalo said, which was great, is that you want to make sure that you're giving your people the benefits that are important to them. So I can list here and tell you like all these benefits, but really you have to figure out what's most important to them. We do host quite a few webinars talking about benefits, and we just hosted one last week where 300 people came to it. And basically we talked about the best benefits for 2024. If you want, I can actually share my screen with you really quickly so you can see this. You can see some of these here that we talked about. So the first one is like borderless benefits for mobility. So if you are hiring people that are remote or those that want to travel, you want to be able to give them some type of health insurance that travels with them. Async work. So similar to what Gonzalo said, you want to be able to give them that flexibility that they can work wherever they would like to. Equal geographical pay is another one. So like we pay everyone on the team the same, regardless where they live or work. A learning budget, an office allowance, meal stipends, as I mentioned. But really the best thing that we do at SafetyWing is that we vote on benefits. So every year we will have a brainstorming session. We will put a bunch of different benefits that we want on a spreadsheet. We will vote independently. And then whatever comes at the top, maybe there's like 1 or 2 benefits that everybody wants. We'll see if they are not so expensive and if we can afford to give them, we will certainly implement them. So again, like I want to mention also your budget. Depending on your budget, you might not be able to offer all of these. You might be able to offer just 2. And like Gonzalo said, see what the country is mandatory to give, and then you can go with some other interesting benefits like these ones.
Just complementing, I think Gonzalo and Lona say everything, but like as a startup, I will take the Gonzalo's words as work balance. I think that's the most important thing for us as a startup. It's a lot of work, and it's really, you need to be really passionate about it, but you need to learn how to balance your life, your family, and your work. And I think the benefit in a startup every time should be like much more oriented to that. So for example, like days off, or of course being remote, that's what we're talking about today, right? And today it's not a benefit, but it's part of the company. But today the first question we get always, it's okay, can I work remotely? And then to be able to get the space, right? So maybe you don't have maybe you need the budget for buying like a good chair or good screen, right? So you can get work remotely, work really hard, but really be comfortable on the space where you want to work, and also get all what you need to be able to balance work. So maybe it could be gym, it could be extra day off. It's really standard in startups, but you need to be able like to choose it, and then there's a lot of system like, so it's not only like days off, but you can manage extra day off, and also what Gonzalo said, right? It's all about like getting the goals done. So if you can balance the work, get really comfortable in your home, get extra day off, and get to your goals. And I think that's the main objective for getting the benefit, precise benefits.
One more point that I think is extremely important, and I see this a lot with startups, Alvaro and Rafael, is, and it came very prominent during the pandemic and after the pandemic, like people would just get their stuff and go to Mexico and work there, like out of the blue. They wouldn't tell their employer, their company, their manager, or they would go to Costa Rica, or they would say, oh, I'm gonna go 3-5 months to Europe and just work from there. The ones that I guess don't have kids and don't have to be like in the same place, but like that is a huge problem for companies, because at that point you have an asset, you have an employee working in another country where you're not paying your taxes, you're not paying your dues, and it can create, going back to the earlier comment, Rafael, permanent establishment risk, right? And we have seen an infinity of companies that are coming to us saying, hey, we got a letter from X authority in France or Colombia or Mexico, Costa Rica, saying that we have this lawsuit against us because we have 10 employees there. We had no idea they moved there. So it's not our problem, it's their problem. No, it's your problem. You are the employer, you are the company that is hiring these individuals to move to country X. So that started a whole process in the US of US companies going out and sending questionnaires to their employees, asking them, where are you today? Like, where are you located? Like, are you actually, because it's a factor. I'm not saying you cannot send people or you cannot let people go to other countries to work. When you do, you need to make sure you do it the right way and the legal way, because there are implications for the person, but there are implications for you as a company. There is an expression in Spanish, I don't know the translation exactly, but it says the ignorance of the law doesn't exhume you from complying with it, right? And that's 100% true. Like, just because you didn't know that you were supposed to be paying taxes in Mexico or Social Security to the employee or whatever, doesn't mean that you don't have to. So that is a common issue that I see.
But it's doable and solvable. So yeah,
I'm sorry?
like Airbnb, it's solvable.
Yeah, no, 100%. You just need to make sure that you know that it's happening and you know, how do we deal with this? Because in some countries, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can have this person there 2, 3, 4 months, but people that are moving for 6 months, the golden rule is 180 days. So whenever you're outside for more than 180 days, you're considered that your place of residence is the country X. You need to look at the regulations. Another huge factor is what you're saying, Lona, like, your benefits may not cover you if you have an accident in country X, because you do not have that type of benefit package. You didn't tell your employer that you were moving to the country. You didn't buy travel insurance, right? So there is a number of factors and considerations why you should tell your employer, I'm thinking about going for X many months or years to another country.
Good. Awesome. Super helpful. Really, really deep answers. Fantastic. I think super helpful for everybody. I know we're pretty much at time, but I'd be remiss not to address this one question and maybe a couple others. If we can keep them short, I'm going to ask just one panelist to address them. Let's keep them kind of quick, just because I want people to make sure they feel like their questions were answered. So Heidi Fortes asked a really great question, about expansion essentially. So I'm going to ask Lana, what's your take on going to market in another country, primarily in the US? Do you think that you need sales leadership from that specific country to make that happen? If not, why? And do you think that in the case of the US, a more American presence, particularly with the website needs, for example, particularly with the website, need to be established? So Lana, if you don't mind addressing that.
That's an interesting question. I am not from the US, but I've lived here for the last 25 years, or it's been a base for me. And I was the first person that was hired to build the sales team for my company, which is global. I don't think there was really a consideration where this person is from. Depending how your customer is, then it might matter. So for example, our customers usually startups, scale-ups, founders, and it doesn't really matter that somebody is American talking to them. But if you find that in your industry, your customers respond better to somebody who's from the country, then you might need to do that. However, if you don't see a different, like an A/B test that you've run, then you can go with international talent because it's going to be cheaper for you. US salespeople get paid a lot of money. So that's a consideration you want to make sure you consider. A head of sales gets paid over $250 a year. And then sales reps can make anywhere up to $1 million a year, right? Depending what you're selling, if it's an enterprise product. So without knowing too much about your product, it's hard for me to say one way or the other. I can just give you the experience from my shoes. So.
Awesome. Fantastic, Lona. Thank you. This next question is from Atlas. He put it in the chat instead of the Q&A, so not everybody sees it. So I'm going to read it aloud. And Gonzalo, I would love your perspective on this. So Atlas has his own VC fund. It's completely remote. And they do that to cover basically all the key startup markets that they want to be in. So they have quote unquote boots on the ground. So Gonzalo, can you talk a little bit about what you see as being an advantage for startups that are built as remote first in attacking their specific markets?
I think that touches on the point that I mentioned earlier. I think it's not as much about the being remote that gives you an advantage, is how well you plan on this going to market, right? The reality is that there is a number of ways that you can go into another country. It doesn't necessarily need to be that you set up a subsidiary or a branch. Like you can enter with an ERA model where you can have a partner like Vistra or others hire the person under their payroll, right? And still dedicating this person to the role, the activities that you're doing. The main thing is understanding that when you start doing business in any country that you go to and you want to have boots on the ground, you need to make sure that you're complying with the local requirements, right? And depending on the activities that you're going to do, if you're going to be generating revenue in country, if you need to sign contracts in country, some customers say, I don't want to sign a contract with a US company. I want to sign a contract with a French company because I'm a French company, or a Spanish company because I'm from Spain. If you need to contract in country, generate sales in country, then that are going to be delivered and contracted in country, or if you're required to have a presence for any other reason that a customer gives you, you should have a subsidiary or a branch. You should have some type of structure in country. But there are many scenarios where you don't, where you can go through an EOR, or where you may be able to send people for, like I help a construction company that they send employees for less than a year, 3-6 months normally, to a bunch of different countries to engineers to kind of oversee projects in that country, right? And they don't really need to do any type of setup. They just get them their travels insurance. They make sure that if there are any stipends that need to be paid in country, that they do it the right way, and that's how they operate. At the end of the day, another like good recommendation I would give to everybody on the call is don't be shy or don't be cheap on getting the advice that you need to be able to operate in other countries. Like make sure that you talk to your lawyers, that you talk to your tax advisors, that you talk to the people that can give you the insights that you need. Because if you make those mistakes, it's going to be way more costlier than the advice that you have to pay for.
Great point. Yep. You don't want to get in trouble later and spend more than it would have cost to invest earlier, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Eyal, and let's try. I'm trying to get this. We have 2 more questions, so I want to move kind of quickly, but obviously not to rush. But Eyal, question for you back on cultural expansion. When growing your teams in new countries or new markets, Alessia, I lost the question. Oh wait, you know what? I have it here. Sorry, 1 second. When moving into a new country, do you plan to move somebody from your executive team there as well for a little bit of time so that they can directly interact with that new local team or team member and share the company culture directly, so there are no, I guess, lapses or misunderstandings about the culture, and so it can stay consistent? Is that relevant for you? And I know you talked a little bit about in-person.
Yeah, I think it's what we like discuss and with Lana, right?
Yeah.
No, I think I don't think you need to move an executive to there. What we have done, yes, we've traveled to know if it's at a high level in the team. But I think if you have a good vision and culture and the process in place and the communication channel, I don't think you need to move there. in my opinion, and if it's executive level or C-level, I would like to know him, right? And then he can build the team, or if it's a country manager. Usually in Latam, what we do is like hire a really high-level country manager and he can build the team. So if you have the mission to build a team in the country, yeah, I would like to go there to know him a little bit. So to sit with him, like him, her, like a few days, right? To know each other and to work on a plan.
But not necessarily move there.
Not move
Yeah.
there.
Okay. You don't need months, for example. Okay. In your opinion. Okay. Very helpful. One last question, Lana, if you can take us home. Interesting question, I think related back in a sense to benefits and culture. How much importance are you giving to mental health and how? For example, at SafetyWing, do you think it's a differentiator these days? Specifically, you know, in the startup world, given the increased pressure of less fundraising going on and the isolation potentially of remote work?
Yeah, I saw that question come in and I thought it was very interesting. It is definitely the question of our times, right? Like mental health is huge and we need to consider that in all of our companies as we're building them. How do we support our people that are remote with mental health? I mean, I have this in my current team. You know, I have a current Gen Z employee and she definitely, you know, takes her time with mental health things, and she shared a lot with me, and I have really helped her through it. We use our, you know, health insurance to give them certain therapy sessions, but actually we're working actively to see what else can we bring into our remote health insurance to potentially maybe provide peer-to-peer mental health. I know that there's a few startups that are actually offering peer-to-peer mental health for like $10 a month or $15 a month. That can really help them to talk through certain issues with other people, with their peers, versus having to be a therapist, if you will. But I think it's a huge issue. We should definitely address it in our companies. We should make sure that we have things to let people be open about it, to maybe have a Slack channel that talks about those things. We need to absolutely support our teams.
Yeah, one can argue it's one of the main issues of our times in terms of work culture.
100%.
Right? Very cool. Thank you, Lana, and thank you to all of our panelists, Eyal, Gonzalo, Lana. Thank you so much for your insight, for your time. I know you're all very busy. Thank you to our audience and the people that asked some questions. I apologize for going over a little, but we were so engaged that it was hard to kind of stop talking. And I am a little remiss. We didn't, you know, mention some of the questions about sales, but maybe if we're lucky, we can get everybody here back together and we can continue the conversation because it was really, really fascinating and really insightful. So thank you, everybody, again. Thank you also to Alessia, who's in the background, kind of managing all of this. So I don't want her to not get her credit as well. And yeah, any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly at the Venture City. We can pass them along to our amazing panelists.
Or add us on LinkedIn. Feel free to add us.
Go ahead, add everybody on LinkedIn. I'm sure everybody here will be welcome to taking your connection and speaking about really whatever you want. So thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful day. And we'll see everybody soon.